Hi, ever wanted to teach a new knitter to knit? Had a frustrating time? Follow me for a curriculum on how to teach your friend to knit. Hi, this is Beth and Marvin, my co-host, with Beth's Mixed Bag of Knitting. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're coming back, even more welcome. I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the prior videos enough to come back and visit with us again. So today, I'm going to talk about teaching a friend to knit and a curriculum. Not a tutorial about how to knit, because I'm going to assume that if you're going to teach a friend to knit, you know how to knit, but a roadmap, a curriculum, so that you and your friend are not frustrated. If you're a new knitter, this is not going to teach you a knit, but if you don't have a friend that can teach you a knit and you're kind of going off of YouTube, you might want to watch also, because this will give you a roadmap and it'll give you some hints on things that will not be good and things that will be helpful, so that when you're going on your journey through your own path by watching videos on YouTube on how to use the technical skills, you'll know what things to avoid and what to start with and how to go through the process. So I think it's good for everybody, whether you're a brand new knitter looking for a roadmap on how to progress in your journey, or if you want to have a friend and teach your friend to knit. So I've been teaching people to knit for a while. I will tell you, when I first started, it was kind of a disaster. I had a group of friends that wanted to learn to knit. I decided I'm going to teach them all to knit. We all went away, and I tried to teach 6 or 7 people all at the same time. And there was a lot of whine involved. All resulted in bad results. Now, they did all eventually learn to knit, but it was not the best way to do it. I've learned a lot of things since then. I'm big into teaching people to knit. I don't charge for it. My view of the world is I want to grow more knitters. It's something I love, and I want more people to love it. So anyone that comes my path, like, you want to learn to knit? Want to learn to knit? And so I'm always trying to teach people to knit. So that's what this video is about. So the system I've developed is from many, many mistakes, trial and errors. And the goal here is not to finish a blanket or finish a project. The goal is to create someone who loves to knit and wants to keep knitting and wants to do their second project and wants to move on. So my teaching philosophy is kind of this: don't overwhelm a new knitter. One of the things I did initially is I tried to teach people to knit and purl all at once. And they got overwhelmed. They were doing too much. And I was trying to teach them too much too fast. One of the things I did early on was same group, a couple months later, I decided I was going to teach them all to make a sweater. I found a sweater pattern. I printed it all out. We all bought different colors, the same yarn, and I picked the pattern because it was a cardigan. It had a small cable on it. It had 3 needle bind off. And so I was trying to teach all these things at once. It didn't go well for most of them. We had some tears that weekend. So the goal is to not overwhelm people, to do it in a systematic method that builds confidence, reduces frustration. Every project should have a purpose, a goal, a learning idea behind it, and that method and that goal should be accomplished before they move on. And that way you're going to have a happier knitter and you're going to be a happier teacher, because you will both be less overwhelmed. So first, let's talk about the tools. While I am a firm circular needle cant person, when I first teach someone to knit, I use straight needles, 8s or 10s, ideally wooden needles because they're less slippery. And that way they have a smaller thing to deal with. They're shorter. They don't have the confusion of the circular needle, and it's just back and forth. So I start everybody with a straight needles. I want yarn that's worsted weight. I want yarn that's not splitty. That's a big deal because that's a disaster for new knitters. So no splitty yarn. And you want to make sure that they can get their needle in there without breaking it. I also find I like some of the variegated yarn. And the reason I like a variegated yarn is when I'm teaching them to knit, I can often tell them, grab that blue part and pull it down through the orange part. And so if there's different colors, that's very helpful. If that's not what you have, it's not that big a deal, but I find that it's very helpful. So you want to have them basically learn how to do that and do a swatch. So I'm going to teach everybody first to cast on, obviously. Use whatever cast on method you like, whatever is comfortable for you. I always use the long tail cast on. That's what I learned, 40 years ago. That's what I'm comfortable with. And so I always teach everyone the long tail cast on, but there's no magic between that. Whatever you're comfortable with, teach them. Again, this is not about giving you techniques. It's about the curriculum. So get them to cast on. I normally cast on 60-ish stitches, and then I teach them to knit. And all they do is knit basically a swatch until they're getting their rows done with not too many holes. One of the things I've learned is that when a new knitter turns their yarn, and I teach continental, but that's obviously not crucial. Whatever you want to teach is good for you. But when they turn their yarn and they go to the next row, if they don't have the yarn in the right place, sometimes a new knitter will see 2 stitches because they haven't pulled the yarn around the back. So to avoid having a project that goes like this, which I've had before I learned this, is I put a marker 1 stitch before each end. And that way the new knitter knows if there's ever more than 1 stitch, there's a problem. And they look to make sure the yarn is in the right place, so there's 1 stitch. So first thing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I tell them not to worry about it. Everyone has their own personality. I recently taught my aunt, she couldn't even stand if her swatch had 1 drop stitch. I tell them this is not about making a project. This is about learning a skill. And the skill you're learning is to knit and do it over and over. And if it's a little messy, sometimes if it's really messy, I'll take it from them and do a row or 2 to get it so the stitches are more stable for them and it's easier to move forward. But I tell them, don't worry if something's dropped or twisted, turned and twisted, whatever it is, just keep going. The goal is to learn to knit. There's a couple little rhymes you can use. You can Google them and find them. I always go, Jack goes up out of the hole. He goes around the tree. He goes back in the hole and off jumps he. So that's kind of the little rhyme I use. Some people like it. There's a stick 'em stab 'em one that's really cute, but I can never remember that one. But I just have them sit, and what I'll do is I'll give them this ball of yarn. I'll send them home and basically tell them to finish that ball of yarn. Now, it's not a giant ball of yarn, but they'll probably have about 8-10 inches. And the goal is when they're really feeling comfortable, come back for lesson number 2. I also tell them, never stop in the middle of a row. New knitters have a big problem with that, and I've had problems where they've stopped in the middle of the row and turned and went back the other way. Obviously, that's not a good thing. So I tell them not to stop in the middle of a row, and to always, once they go home, at least do 1 row a day, because I'm afraid that if they go too many days without doing at least 1 row, they're going to forget. Sometimes I'll have, depending on how far away from me they live, I'll have them video me while I'm doing it so they can refresh their memory if they forget. I give them some YouTube suggestions on where they can go if they don't know how, if they get frustrated and can't remember. But that's the first project. Go home, knit that ball of yarn, got in my nose, and when you finish with that and feel comfortable with that, come back. So that's project number 1. Don't worry about making mistakes, move on. Project number 2. Now, a lot of people I know will start people with a washcloth or a scarf. Okay, a washcloth, from my perspective, is kind of like the Swatch. It's really too small to be give them the long-term confidence I want them to have. And a scarf, obviously, is not very practical in San Diego. And certainly all the places around the world, it's not practical sometimes a year. So what I have them do is a lap blanket. And a lap blanket you can use in June in front of the TV, and you can use it in December in front of the TV. I always use Bernay blanket yarn. Okay, not making a plug for them, but I like it because it's inexpensive. It comes in colors that have all kinds of variegations, which means they're not going to see their mistakes as much, and they're not going to freak out, and they'll get a project that they will like at the end. I have them cast on 80 stitches, and now we have moved to circular needles. I use the inexpensive Clovers. I use size 11s, works pretty well. I used to use 13s, but it made kind of a loosey-goosey blanket. I think 11s work better for most knitters. And I cast on 80 stitches. That's all we do, garter stitch. And the only lesson here is to get comfortable with the circular needles and the knit stitch. Once again, marker at each end. Before I figured this trick out, lots of blankets like this. The other thing, they want to learn how to hold their yarn, how to tension it, how to knit with confidence and have consistency. And so it doesn't take that long because the yarn is big, so that's great for them. And they actually get a project that they can see progress. They see something they can use. Sometimes it ends up being a dog blanket. Actually, the most recent one, when I was teaching my aunt to knit, I didn't look in the closet very well. And I thought I had 2 skeins of this, and apparently I had a skein of this and 2 skeins of this. So when we went to do the second skein, after she knit all this, we realized that there was only 1 skein. So now this is now a new Marvin blanket so that he can curl up in it, because obviously didn't work out as a blanket. But she did get the skill down. She got nice even stitches. She learned how to hold her yarn. That was all great. So that's project number 2. And depending on how they do will depend on where you go next. So sometimes project number 2 will result in some drop stitches, holes. This one, she did very well. She's kind of a perfectionist, so she, anytime there was anything, she came over. Also depends sometimes on my knitters. Like I had a neighbor who just lived across the street, so her learning curve was very quick, because anytime she had a problem, she'd just run across the street. Oh, come here, Marvin. She would just run across the street and I'd fix it. So she learned pretty well. But sometimes someone lives farther away, and if their first blanket is a problem, you might want to have them do a second one of garter stitch. The other skill they learn, obviously, in project number 1 is how to join yarn. I encourage them to always, the new knitter, to join at the end of the row. And I do 2 balls. So this lap blanket is a 2-ball blanket and gets done pretty quickly. If you think your knitter needs more, have them do another one. These are great baby blankets. There's always somebody you can give these to. I had Beth blankets all over town that I gave to all kinds of people. So make the call on whether you think your knitter needs a little more time with the knit stitch. Okay. Once you feel like they've got that down, the next project I have my knitters do is a checkerboard. So what I have them do, same thing, I cast on 80 stitches. And I have them knit 10, put a marker. And then I teach them to purl 10, put a marker. Knit 10, put a marker. I do that for 10 rows, and then I swap. So they end up having a checkerboard. Couple things this teaches is it teaches them to count their rows. I am a big fan of, I like these clover things. I wear them around my neck all the time. I have matching ones that match my outfits. Like today I'm going to go somewhere and I'll wear my purple row counter. I had a new knitter recently tell me that what she loves and she fell in love with and she thinks I should teach people to use it is the twice sheared sheep counter that you put on the needles so they don't forget it. That's a great way to go if you're, I have lots of these and I'm just very in tune to doing it. So that's what I like. But certainly the other one is probably a great way if you're learning new to learn that way. And so they learn to count their rows, because obviously at the end of 10 rows, they're going to switch and do purl knit. Most of the time it works out pretty well. Every once in a while I have a knitter that I actually have to write it out for them. And I'll write row 1, 2, 3, and then I'll write row 11. So if row 1 was knit and row 8 was knit and row 10 was purl, then obviously row 11 is going to be purl and row 12 will be knit, and that's how they'll start. But when I've done that, one of the things I've told the new knitters is, before you look at the paper, I want you to look at your knitting and guess what you think it's supposed to be. Then look at the paper to see if it's right. And hopefully this exercise is going to teach people to read their stitches. And so you're going to talk to them about the knit stitch having the V's and being smooth, and the purl stitches being bumpy, so that they can tell what a knit stitch looks like and what a purl stitch looks like. Because obviously reading your stitches is the basics of all knitting. If you can't read your stitches, you're going to have one disaster after another and one mistake after another. So that's a really, really important skill. So that is blanket number 2, which is the checkerboard. And that teaches them counting rows and purling and reading their stitches. So it's kind of 3 things, which is a lot. I try and limit things to one, less things, but that's a big project. And depending on how they do is going to depend on what the next project is. Okay. Also remind your knitters all the time to when they put their yarn down, to pull the yarn way down so the stitches don't fall off, because that's a big thing that they forget. So we don't want to drop stitches everywhere. So that is helpful. The third project, and my friends make fun of me because I'm kind of real strict about these things, because I think if you try and jump ahead, you end up having problems later. So I really try and push the new knitters to really follow through with each of these steps. And the next step and the next blanket I teach is the seed stitch. And I know a lot of people hate seed stitch, but the goal is to read your stitches. I think it also helps learn to move back and forth between the purl and knit and purl and knit. I think doing seed stitch gives you a really good foundation for your purl, so you're less likely to row out as you become a more experienced knitter. I think the reason my purl stitches are so consistent is because for many years I just did seed stitch blankets. I sat at baseball games and did seed stitch blankets because they were mindless. I could do that without looking. So my purl stitch is very consistent with my knit stitch, but I learned how to go back and forth. Okay, so when I do this project, instead of casting on 80 stitches, I cast on 81 stitches. Why do I do that? Because I want them to start every row with a knit. Okay, and that will help them, because, and sure, they definitely need to not put this one down, because if they put this one down, guaranteed 9 out of 10 times they can't figure out where they're going. But this way they always know they start with the knit at each end, because you've got an odd number of stitches, and that makes it a little easier for them. And once again, the goal here is to get those purl stitches really solid and to learn to read your knitting. You can't really, like I said, that's the basics. It's like, learning to bake, but you don't know how to turn the oven on. You got to learn to read your knitting. And so that's the first thing we do. And that's the third project. And most of the time, once they finish that third project, they're pretty ready to go. And they feel very comfortable. The third blanket, they're feeling very comfortable. They're feeling accomplished. They've made a couple blankets for maybe some friends, family members. The dog's got a blanket. Everybody's got a blanket. And some knitters want to keep doing blankets, and that's fine. I've got one knitter, and I think it's been 7 or 8 years, and she predominantly does blankets. Another one predominantly did blankets and hats, and this last Christmas, I called her and said, get over here. She's a teacher, so she had the holiday off. I said, you and I are going to knit a sweater. You're off this week. You're going to come sit with me, and we're going to go row by row. And we did that together. We'd actually knit the ranunculus. I had this gold yarn. It turned out I really had bought it and had tons of it. And so we knitted it together, and now she's an addict. She loves knitting sweaters, and she's been probably done 4 or 5 since then. So, but for years, probably 5 or 6 years, she did 1 or 2 little tank tops and just didn't like it. She was very frustrated, and she just loved doing blankets. They were relaxing. And she did some very complicated blankets, but that's what she liked doing. So it depends on what your knitter wants to do next. So assuming your knitter wants to move on, the sweater I recommend for the next project is the Anchor Tee by Petite Knit. I like this one for a couple reasons. Number one, it comes in a couple gauges. I normally encourage them to do the one that's I think it's 20 or 22 gauge. I don't remember. I'll put it in the show notes. And I like it for a couple reasons. Number one, it's got the knit and purl at the top. I also like it because most of the increases it's a round yoke. So you're doing so many rows, I think you do 10 rows or whatever it is, and then you do an increase. And so many stitches, you do a yarn over for the increase, nice simple increase. And the next row, you knit through the back of the stitch. So it's a real easy increase, nice and even. And then what I also like about it is there's a couple rows of raglans. So they don't have to worry about counting raglans for, 40 rows. They're only counting, I don't know how many rows it is, 4 or 6 rows, whatever it is. But it's a small amount of rows, but they learn how to do raglans. And then once they pull the sleeves off, it's top down. They can try it on, talked about how you can make it a little bigger if you thought it wasn't bigger, adding some under stitches on the underarm, and I walk them through. I have a bunch of anchor tees because a bunch of times I will knit them with my new knitters, and I like it. It's a nice, comfortable summer t-shirt. We do it together. It's fun. They like it. And then, of course, once you divide for the sleeves, it's just round and round and round and round and round. Everybody loves round and round and round and round. So that's a nice project for a knitter that's excited, wants to do a sweater, wants to learn some new skills, but it's not too overwhelming. The pattern is well written. It's easy to follow. It's easy to help instruct. It's pretty easy to get the right size, all those kind of things. So that's a really good first sweater. They get to try it on. It's a garment I think they'll wear, especially like it's in San Diego, because it's very lightweight. Though I've had one knitter do it in a wool, and she did it in long sleeves, and that's fine. Obviously, there's different options for it. So let's talk about some of the mistakes that new knitters make. Twisted stitches. So in the beginning, you got to really watch them because they have a tendency to start twisting their stitches. You want to nip that in the bud. So I normally have them come over a couple days just to keep on track at the beginning, because once they develop that bad habit, it's kind of hard to unlearn. So you really want to make sure they're not twisting their stitches from the beginning, because unlearning that is difficult. Pulling stitches too tight. I had one knitter and her blanket was so tight that I actually made her second blanket. I loaned her a set of my metal needles, interchangeables, because I think metal gives you a little looser gauge and it's not so tight, a little slippery, and that seems to be working out for her. So I kind of adjust what you're doing. So that's an issue. Too loose sometimes is a problem. I tell them not to worry about it. Everyone's tension is what their tension is, as long as you can be consistent. And so I really kind of push that. They often forget whether they're knitting or purling, and the accidental increases are a big issue, and that's why I have those markers. The markers are a big thing. They also worry about uneven tension. They're not doing well. They're a bad knitter. That's not what this is about. It's about learning. And the blankets, that's one of the reasons I like the Brene blanket yarn, because the variegation doesn't show that so much. You don't see the uneven tension, and they can get a product that they like, they can wear, they can move forward. After that first sweater, I still stay involved. And so each project going forward, whether they pick the yarn out or pick the sweater out, whatever they want to do, I kind of step them through. We kind of look at patterns together. I teach them about using Ravelry. I think you should encourage a new knitter to start with Ravelry right away. I wish I had every project I had from the beginning of time on Ravelry, because there's things I wish I knew about them and I don't. And so the sooner they start using Ravelry, the easier it is. Like for me, I was trying to go back and add sweaters. When I finally learned the stash feature, it took me 2 days to kind of go through and organize what I had and take pictures and upload it and type everything in and blah, blah, blah. It took forever. Whereas if I'd started from the beginning, it's very easy. And so I teach them how to find a pattern. I teach them how to type in the things that we're going to want from a new knitter. And then I look at the pattern and say, okay, is this something that makes sense for them? Because the biggest issue is you want to avoid frustration. The new knitter that gets too frustrated is going to quit. So you want them to be happy. And so if you take on too much, they're not going to be happy. They want a nice, simple project that's going to move them forward, learn a couple new skills each time, but give them a product they're happy with and an experience they're happy with. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be some cussing and frustration. We're all going to have that. Some tinking, some frogging, all those things are going to happen, but you want to keep that to the minimum. Other thing you want to be able to teach them is how to tink. So when they realize they went too far, they didn't do the increase, tinking is a skill they need to have. And so you need to teach them how to tink and how to take the stitches back, how to put them on, how to make sure they're facing the right way. That's an important skill. The other thing you want to teach a new knitter, and you might want to teach it with that gauge swatch even, is how to pick up the stitches with a crochet hook. If they live next door to you, that's great. But if they're home alone and they drop a stitch, obviously they want to be able to fix it, not have it go too long. One of the other things I like about the thick yarn, the Brene blanket yarn, is that if they do drop a stitch, it's not going to run amok. So they normally can get it in the car, get it to my house. We can fix it if they can't. And the stitch is going to be still within a reasonable pickup place, and it's something I can identify. But that's something they need to learn. They need to learn how to fix mistakes, tink. Those are things that are big, 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 big issues. Do not no matter how much they want to. Let them get too crazy because they're going to be frustrated. If they really want to do different colors, one of the things they can do is they can do self-striping yarn. They can do variegated yarn that gives them a little variety. When I first was doing sweaters, I made the same sweater over and over, just different kinds of yarn. I did it in wool, I did it in cotton, I did it in all different variegations. And I got very comfortable with doing raglans and counting and keeping track of my rows and all those things that are important for the basic moving forward. I stay away from tiny needles with baby knitters. 8s are probably the bottom. 8s or 9s are really good. Maybe a 7, because they want to be able to see things better. And when the things are a little bigger, the stitches are a little bigger, I think it's easier for them to see. It's easier for them to fix the mistakes. And their projects get done sooner. And there's nothing like a finished project to give somebody a boost of excitement and to make them love the craft and be able to wear their sweater and say, I made this, and tell their friends, I made this. And so being able to finish a project is important. I don't care how much they want to, make a black sweater. No, you're not going to make a black sweater. You will be unhappy. Black sweaters need to go a little bit farther down the path. Lighter yarns, easy to see, read your stitches, all those things. I don't do complicated, obviously lace. Maybe a yarn over. I'll move up to that where there's some simpler yarn overs, maybe in the yoke. Give it a little bit of a kind of a lace pattern, but certainly not all over. Maybe a couple rows that gives it something. The ranunculus is a fun one for a first year knitter because there's so many YouTube videos that kind of lead it through step by step. And so that's one that they like. They don't have to worry about gauge. They don't have to worry about what yarn they're using. Oh, and make sure your new knitters, talk to them about gauge. Nothing's worse than developing bad habits at the beginning. So teach them about making a gauge swatch. Teach them how to read a gauge swatch. I had a lot of sweaters early on because I didn't understand gauge. No one explained that to me. I thought gauge was what it said on the label of the ball band, and that was what I thought gauge was. I had no idea that my gauge would be different from the person sitting next to me. So make sure you talk to them about the gauge and how to get a gauge and how to do a gauge swatch and all those kind of issues. Stay away from splitty yarn. Cotton yarn can be hard because it tends to be splitty. Any pattern that's complicated, new techniques in the same project. I try and look for projects that have 1 or 2 new techniques. One of the ones I taught last year and helped with a new knitter was just simple stripes. And that way they were able to do multiple colors. They changed the yarn. They learned how to do the jog, but it was still basically all stocking knit. The one I used was a round yoke, so it was easy to do the increases, and they were able to do colors. So I really guide them for at least the first year until I feel like they really feel comfortable. And anytime after that, they come back and say, what do you think of this pattern? Is this pattern going to work for me? Because the more feedback you can give them on those issues, the more confidence they're going to have in moving forward. That's important. Another big rule for me, no wine for new knitters. I cannot tell you, because one of the things our group likes to do is go to the winery or have wine at the house, how many times wine has resulted in bad results. Even myself, many years ago, I was working for the Navy, and I was in Guam, and I'd gone down to dinner and had ordered a glass of wine. They brought my food, and as soon as the waitress put it in front of me, she realized that she'd done it wrong, and she took it back to redo it, but she brought me a second glass of wine. So now I've had 2 glasses of wine and pretty much no food. Had my food, went back up to my hotel room, and cast on this project. And the next morning I was like, okay, I guess this is getting frogged. The whole thing had to get frogged. So even a more experienced knitter, a little wine is not a great thing. But for a baby knitter, it's absolutely a no-go. They start getting all confused. Things get a mess. And it's going to increase their frustration level. And that's really the number one goal, is we want new knitters to not have a high frustration level. We want them to enjoy it. I mean, they're going to have frustration. Any new skill is going to cause some frustration, but we want to keep that to a minimum, and anything we can do to keep that to a minimum. So stay away from the wine when they're new knitters. Okay, let's talk about this. I'm very excited. This is my very recent, this morning, finished project. I'm excited because I'm going to a party this afternoon. I'm going to get to wear it. And this was a fun knit. It's the oak camisole, and I can't even pronounce the designer. I'll put that in the notes because there's no way I can get there. I'll pop it up so you can see it. It knit really fast. It was on size 9. I loved it. The only change I made is it called for an I-cord sleeve, and I just did my what I call my lazy I-cord, where I pick up the stitches, I purl one row, and then I bind it off in a knit. It called for a neck I-cord, but I really liked the way it looked. And so since I liked the way it looked, I didn't pick up the stitches for the neck and didn't do the neck. We'll see after I wear it if it gets sloppy and funny. I might add it later, but right now I think it looks kind of cute the way it is. The one bad part is this was part of my mission to use old yarn. So this was actually some of my oldest yarn. It was yarn that when I first started doing sweaters, I had started making a sweater with it. And I got, I don't know, partway, halfway, whatever it was, and realized I wasn't going to have enough yarn to finish the sweater. So in my closet, I had this bag full of all these little balls because I'd taken it all apart and taken the sleeve apart. And so I had all these little balls. And so obviously it was not inviting as far as doing a new project, but I was determined. And I love it. And so I'm very excited. The disadvantage of that process, I've talked about this before, is it's Summer Tweed by Rowan. And I love the yarn, except guess what? Yes, you've got it. It's discontinued again. So this was one that as I was knitting along, and it's got kind of this fake cable, which is kind of fun because on the one, it's a 4-row repeat. On one row, you're basically just pulling the stitch over. So it looks like a cable, but you're not having to use a cable needle or anything. And it's, the yarn is a cotton silk blend. It doesn't feel silky, but I think the silk gives it a really light, airy feel that made it perfect for San Diego. So as I'm knitting, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need more of this because this is great. It's a great San Diego yarn. Yes, discontinued. So, oh well. Good news is I'm using the older yarn. The bad news is because it took me so long, I can't get any more of it. Hopefully, if I keep this determination on using the yarn from the bottom of my closet, maybe by the end of this year, early next year, I'll start getting into yarn that is still in production. We'll see. Keep your fingers crossed. I'm trying to even, if I can, do even more than one at a time that's older yarn. So we'll see. So I'm going to put my outline in the show notes. If you've got any things I've forgotten, suggestions that you've taught people that you think would be helpful, go ahead and plop it in so everybody else can read it. I'm sure that would be helpful. I'll try and add those things into the outline if you think I should, and update it as we go along. Now, don't forget to stay tuned and watch our Knitter in the Spotlight. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, please subscribe, please comment. It really helps. And hopefully you have a wonderful day knitting, and I'll see you back soon. Have a great day from San Diego.
Okay.
If you could only have one kind of yarn for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One like worsted?
One brand.
Oh, one brand. That's why we're here, is to not just get one brand. I would do Legerson.
And that's your favorite?
That is my favorite.
What's your favorite about it?
I like the colors. I like the colors that it's not flat. I like the colors that it kind of feels like there's more to it than what you see.
What's your favorite thing about knitting?
Oh, you just get to relax. You just get to lose yourself. You just lose yourself when you're knitting.
Are you a solitary knitter or a social knitter?
Both.
What's your favorite?
Oh, with Liz.
With knitting your friend?
Yeah, that's my fave.
And why is that?
Yeah, because it is. It's social and it's, yeah. Therapeutic. Yeah.
So what's the favorite thing you bought today?
My Legerson.
What color did you buy?
What color did I buy?
Is that this?
No, it's this one.
Oh, this bag.
It's this bag. I got an eggplant for, I don't know. And then I got this for a t-shirt.
Oh, I got some of that too.
Isn't that beautiful?
I got it in navy.
You got it in navy?
Yes, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you.